By now, you've surely heard that productivity in the US has increased since the 1970s while wages have essentially stagnated or failed to keep up. You've likely heard arguments citing this phenomenon from various politicians, social figures, and media outlets. And many of you have even seen a graph similar to this, depicting the increase in productivity coupled with the relative stagnation in wages. But what you likely haven't heard is that graphs like this are essentially comparing apples and oranges, and they certainly don't say what some politicians say they do. So what's really going on? First off, graphs like this only take into account the wages of production and non-supervisory workers, while ignoring the rest of the workforce. Right off the bat, this ignores the wages of nearly a third of the economy. When we take this one simple fact into account, we see that wages of all employees have fared better, but still not as much as we would like. Secondly, although wages are the primary piece of employee compensation, they aren't the only compensation paid to labor. Fringe benefits, like healthcare, make up an increasing share and have actually increased faster than wages. The employer cost for employee compensation summary from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that these fringe benefits now account for 31.4% of employee compensation, with the remaining 68.6% coming in the form of wages. A more complete measure of real earnings is real hourly compensation that takes into account all the benefits earned by the employee. This gives us an even different picture. The next problem we run into is that the economic deflators used to get real productivity and real wages are completely different, and as a result, they net us vastly different measures of inflation. For instance, real productivity is arrived at by deflating nominal productivity using the business sector price deflator, while real wages are obtained through the consumer price index. While this may seem logical, the business sector price deflator is represented by a vastly different basket of goods compared to the CPI, and it has grown much slower than the CPI over the years. If we deflate the rise in nominal hourly compensation by the business sector price deflator, we can get an apples-to-apples comparison of wages to worker output, or productivity. The result gives us a measure sometimes called real product compensation. After these adjustments, we actually find that hourly compensation has increased at an annual rate of 1.7% per year, which is in near lockstep with 2% per year increase in productivity. Lastly, economist Robert Lawrence of the Peterson Institute for International Economics explains that the measure of output used to depict productivity is gross output, which also includes depreciation. He argues that net output is a more appropriate measure because it takes into account the increase in short-lived capital, which has increased the share of depreciation in gross output. Comparing real product compensation with net output per hour gives us the relationship between productivity and labor compensation that is relevant for measuring income shares. So it's true, wages have stagnated relative to productivity, that is, if you don't take into account all workers, total compensation, differing price inflators, and you rely on gross output versus net output.